Hey guys, I'm Torsten Malm, tattoo artist specializing in color realism. Today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite pigments, the specific palette I like to use in 99% of all my color work. I use a very limited palette for all my work. I would say 99% of the work I do with this palette. I think I've been using it for about 3 years. Using such a limited palette has helped me understand a lot about colors. At first when I started, yes, it was very nerve-wracking and it was slower than normal, but as I got used to these pigments, it got much faster. I felt more free as I was creating, and I noticed that I started paying much more attention to small details in the color differences, which I didn't notice before. So it has been a very good teacher for me in color theory. The biggest benefit though is that I really learned these pigments very well. I know exactly how they go in the skin. I know exactly how they heal. So I'm using the same stuff every day. And this is different to using a palette of, let's say, 50 colors. Because when you're using 50 colors and you're going to change those colors from day in to day out, then the fact is that you're never really going to learn every pigment truly. And all pigments can vary and change a little bit in their nature of how they heal and how they change throughout time, and even how they go in. So I'm super happy with this limited palette. Let's see if I can talk more about it in some upcoming episode, and if you guys have some specifics you want to ask about this palette, let me know in the comments below. I also want to mention that I have a master's class, and I'm going to put the link here below where I talk in more depth about this and how I use the colors. So definitely check it out if you're super interested. And I also recommend, if you're feeling like you want to try this out, you can start by just narrowing down your palette a little bit. Let's say if you usually use 10 different blues to achieve some transitions, maybe drop it down to 2 or 3 and use those to get the transitions. There are many more benefits than just the few benefits we talked about here. But yeah, I'm going to cover more of those in the master's class, and maybe in some upcoming videos here if you have some specific questions about my use of pigments. And I'm going to be sure to also put out a video about gray washes and gray opaques, how I go about that, and how I choose them depending on the skin tones also. The color I use most is a white. It's an opaque white called Snow White Opaque from Intense. It's a very solid white, and I use it to lighten up most of my tones when I'm mixing on the go. Then I'm using a yellow, which is called Golden Yellow from Intense. It's as pure to a yellow as it can be. I'm using a red, which is called Bright Red from Intense. It's a very pure red and a very good pigment. And I'm using a blue, pure blue, called Mario's Blue from Intense, a very good pigment. So as most of you can see, just by using these 3 pigments, yellow, red and blue, I can create most of the colors I need. Now this concept is of course based on the basic color wheel, where the primaries are yellow, red and blue. And the idea is that from these 3 colors you should be able to mix all the other color families. Now this is true to a point, but it is still flawed because it's based on the basic color wheel, and we're gonna go maybe at some point a little bit deeper into that. But just to mention now, this is sufficient enough for me to work in realism, because as I don't necessarily always need the purest of colors, most of the realistic work I'm tattooing is slightly mudded down tones. This is very sufficient for me. Now, in addition to these 3 colors, as we already spoke, I use the white, and I also use a black, of course. And that black I'm using is called Zuper Black from Intense. Now, this is a very strong pigmented black, and yeah, a very good black. I'd say if I do lining work or something else, I might choose a different black. But for solid color fills and blending, this Zuper Black is really good. Just to speed things up, I also use a gray as a mid-tone between white and black. Now this gray that I'm using is called Silver from Intense. A very, very opaque gray and a very good tone to use as an intermediate mixing tone. Now, in addition to get those dark reds faster, I'm using most of the time a dark red called Weibi's red from Intense. Sometimes, depending on the tattoo I'm working on, I might opt to choose True Magenta from Intense instead of the Weibi's red. So my color palette basically consists of 7 colors all the time. I'd say, yeah, maybe once a year I go and pick one color out of the shelf where I know I'm gonna bang out a big area of that specific color. But this palette is sufficient enough to create all the colors I need most of the time, and this is just by dipping into the cups and mixing it in the tip and going on the go. Just to show you guys what's really possible with this limited amount of pigments, I'm gonna show here some of my work that I have been creating with only these pigments. And basically, if you head to my Instagram, which I mark here below also, you can check, I would say, all the work that's been done published since the last 3 years or so has all been done with this limited palette. So you really can then see the versatility of this palette. Thank you guys for dropping in, and as I said, definitely drop a comment below if there's some topic that you want me to discuss with you guys. Hopefully you learned something here, hopefully you got inspired, maybe you're gonna try it out on your own, and as always, I'll see you next week.